got two esteemed speakers that you might have seen before here. Meth, there are some of our voices. Ramy Riad, the head of feature messaging at Webex, previously known as IMI Mobile, I suspect. Inderpal, Mumick, the CEO of DOTGO, and now part of GapShop as well. Things changes a lot. Please come along. And welcome here. And we only have 50 minutes, which is probably a bit challenging in itself, how to consume so much. But in an age of TikTok and 30 seconds messages, you should be at your own, in your own world in there. Ramy, to you, one of the simple, difficult questions we heard today is why RCS? Because what has happened recently, we should make some people feel better. So we heard from Lauren, we heard from Ryan. Ryan was asking, he never had a campaign, somebody knocking on his door and saying, please, please, please send this message. Well, are we making, is it matchmaking? Is it happening? Do you have something?
I don't think it's matchmaking yet.
Okay, well, I'll try my best.
But I'll try. I think what we've been seeing in several markets, RCS is picking up steam. Definitely not in the US. The US penetration is, I would say, sub 10% or even 10% at best. Brands are aware of it. A lot of the larger brands know what it is, know that it exists. They just don't see enough penetration. And without that being solved, they're not going to adopt it. Some of them may do, like we've seen Walmart in the US, Walgreens, and some really large brands, Best Buy, that have been working with years for RCS. And internationally, there is more RCS adoption, but they're now pockets. So we know Brazil has a very high penetration. Mexico, Canada is up there, 35% I think is RCS penetration. But the brands are still, what are we going to do with the rest of the 65%? How are we going to reach them? And I think that's what we're seeing across all the different markets is that RCS is growing, people are going to use it, but we have to help them remove some of the barriers of entry. So one of the things we discovered as well when we talked to brands about RCS is they're like, this is amazing, but I need more than 160 characters. I need a whole design team for colors, logos, graphics. Where's the budget gonna come from a company like a Walgreens or a Walmart to say, where are we gonna allocate these dollars? And also the other thing that we are noticing is Mark, to your point, I don't think it's one bet. There are multiple channels out there, and each one of you from an enterprise, even an operator perspective, know what your customers are using. Like Instagram in the US, everybody's using Instagram for even peer-to-peer messaging, not for business messaging, but now business messaging is open on Instagram. Naturally, people are going to use the channels that they are engaging with their friends, they're seeing influencers on, they're seeing brands communicate, they're just gonna pick up the phone and communicate back. The same thing, we've seen the launch of Google Business Messages, Apple Messages for Business. There's a whole, like we can put a slide up there on how many channels exist today. But it's not one or the other. I think it's a variety based on where your subscribers are. RCS is definitely growing, and I've been a big advocate of RCS for years now, and we're going to see more brands use and leverage RCS. It's just taking a long time.
And I'm going to ask you, can you hear me? Yes. I'm going to ask you another question we heard from the presentation. I think it was Lauren, it was Ryan, it was many others. Well, probably it was Tim Cook as well, by saying buy an iPhone and don't buy anything else. But is it, the bubbles, etc., the discussions. But why does that apply to Instagram or to Twitter? Twitter worldwide has got fewer users than RCS, believe it or not. And people don't ask that question. Is it because we are used to compare it to SMS, which has got universal, and so we expect a universal reach from RCS? Or is it just another OTT where people simply don't ask that question? They don't ask, do you have 100% coverage on Instagram? No, you don't.
So I think from our perspective, RCS is a carrier-provided channel, whether Google are working with the carrier, whether it's in guest mode in some markets, but it's a carrier-provided channel that is shifting away from SMS to RCS. So if you're going to provide a rich experience to a subset of your subscribers, what about the rest? So if I'm sending an SMS campaign out, and then I'm saying 30% of these subscribers are going to get a rich card, what about the rest?
And what do you answer to them? Can you do it or you cannot do it?
Well, in the US, we know 50% is iPhone. So that's automatically
that is.
excluded, or just call it even. 50% is excluded. Now, the question is, what's the penetration between the brand's opted-in list and the percentage of RCS that's available? The numbers start getting smaller. We're not discounting the channel. We think there's huge potential, but we also see huge potential in discoverability of RCS because it's going to open up new lines of business that don't exist today with SMS. Like users coming to discover the channel, coming to open up what's available. It's like you're going to find information, then RCS is going to be a method. We saw it work with a trial with AT&T a couple of years ago. People were going to a directory to see what's there. Now, I think the UK have done something new with the directories, with the UK operators. They've launched a new version of it, so we're waiting to see some data and numbers come out of that. But it's promising because there's engagement, there are people going to it, and there are brands and advertisers coming to it as well.
Great, so the challenges are there, but you say that there's probably something happening. You decide, we got a question from Ryan, so I'll take it straight away. Well, but you need a microphone, or otherwise people from home on the recording won't see you. Do you have a microphone? Just, you shout at me and I repeat, in the worst case.
Me too, thank you.
It's more of a comment, but it could be a question as well, because I'm going to answer your question, or at least what I think is the answer to my answer to that question. Instagram and Facebook and social media platforms are, by their very nature, one-to-many. That's its own advertising platform. And then they also add one-to-one communication on top of it. SMS, MMS, RCS don't have that benefit. And so that means that they are very different platforms when it comes to communications media. And so we have to compete against the fact that you have an uphill battle with one-to-many in those platforms. Also, I don't know this for sure, but I suspect Instagram and Facebook probably have specific demographic profiles. What's ours? We have to be able to answer the question, is what is the RCS demographic profile for our subscribers, or what are the profiles? Because that's what the advertisers and the aggregators will need.
Thank you. So more homework for us to understand exactly the ins and outs, what is the beast of RCS, what it isn't. But one thing that I'd like to bring in, so we heard from Ramy about what's happening in UK, Europe, but some of the US as well, so there are some brands. But I think it's incredible what's happening in some countries, and I want to share with you. So I've asked Inderpal to come because Inderpal, DOTGO working globally, as you know, but have recently announced something very relevant to these in Nigeria, of all markets, where all the operators are not working together. They don't have a formally structured and so on, but they have managed to create a framework of work together. Can you tell us a bit more what's happening there?
Sure. So I have a couple of slides.
You come and give me here.
Yeah, please. So, can you go to the slides? So I want to talk about some of the experience we've had outside the US. The first thing that I'll talk about is the way we set up the ecosystem in the country of Nigeria, which is a country of a little bit more than 200 million people, about 150 million mobile subscribers, dominated by a carrier MTN, which has 70 million subscribers in the country. Total of 4 subscribers: MTN, Airtel, which is part of the large Airtel group out of India, Glow Mobile, and Nine Mobile, which are 2 local operators there. And we set up an ecosystem where all of the operators, or not all, many of the operators cooperated to put together, and Google worked with us to put together a system where there's one simple way to use RCS across the country for anybody wanting to send messages, brands wanting to send messaging, developers wanting to send messages, ISVs wanting to integrate into their platforms, other CPaaS providers or aggregators wanting to resell messages. Same pricing model, same commercial model, and anybody comes in can send messages across the entire country from a single point of entry. single point of entry, not only from a traffic perspective, but also from verification, onboarding, one process gets you in. Dario was referring to, I think, an event we had earlier this month, on the 1st of this month, announcing this whole process in the country. And we had representatives from MTN and Airtel, the two largest operators, along with Google and Dario from MEF, making this announcement. A lot of coverage in the newspapers, in the media there. There have been, I think one thing we learned, to your question, I think Ryan said, brands are not coming knocking on your door. You need people to go and educate the brands about this. The media helped educate, but the players in the ecosystem, the developers help educate and bring out fantastic use cases. We've had Unilever offer services in the market. We've had Film House, one of the production studios, which is a local partner of Netflix, offer services there as well. And building on that, we've kind of taken that model and say, okay, there is one global hub, a global way for any developer to come in and deliver messages across the world. We are taking this model into many other countries. We've announced it in Nigeria. There are several other countries that are in the process of taking this model out. And also simplify the commercial model and the pricing model. One commercial model that can then apply across the world in as many operators as is possible. Every operator does not fit in, but this is the model we've seen many of the operators adopt, where there really 3 or 6 price points, something known as a use case moving from an SMS to RCS. It's a very simple type of use case. A use case which is more of a single rich message and then a conversation. And a single rich message is a great use case for kind of similar to what is QBM in WhatsApp, and that drives the growth. In fact, WhatsApp is one of the reasons there is more and more likely to be more and more traction for RCS. We see companies very familiar with WhatsApp messaging, saying, oh, here's another rich channel to utilize. Thank you.
So back to here, we've seen how in some markets things can be done differently, and and now there are lots of different solutions out there. Pick your challenge, pick your solutions. What were your challenges in Nigeria? How did you get the 4 operators to unify all of the different processes into a single platform? Did you have to explain to them? Did they come to you? How did it start?
It's actually quite challenging. It took a lot of time. One has to bring the entire ecosystem together. And since this is the first time we were actually bringing it together, wanted to convince Google, one has to convince the operators. We did not convince all the operators to begin with. As you saw in the announcement, we did 2 operators, the 2 larger ones. But as a result of this, as a result of the traffic that has resulted and what we call hero use cases coming from brands, other operators are also coming in and into this whole model, and we expect this will, even though today with the help of Google and the guest cloud, we are supporting all the operators, and Google cooperated in this. It was a big step from their perspective, but we expect other operators have already initiated discussions to come into the model as well.
Great, so there's a bit of a snowball effect. Something has to start. And back to some of the things we heard before, probably you need to make a decision. Choose a stance, in or out. Am I doing them or rolling out? Question for you, as we have a few more seconds. We have you?
Thank you. Very interesting slide. Very curious to know more about what happened in Nigeria. I hear a lot of operators struggling to understand what's in it for me. They understand the value for the brands, understand the value for Google, etc., for all the other players that enable this to happen. But for them, it's difficult to understand what's in it for me. They understand SMS as I get a revenue to terminate an SMS. How do they get revenue in Nigeria? How do the operators make money on this? Is it a termination fee? It's a revenue share from the aggregators that collect the traffic? Or do they have to compete themselves against Google and go sell to the enterprises directly?
So the commercial model actually is very clear if they actually sign up and start monetizing it. They publish a rate card just like they have an SMS rate card, they have an RCS rate card. So it's like a termination charge. They charge, let us say, half a cent for an SMS termination. They could charge half a cent or 1 cent for an RCS termination. And I showed the price. I showed a capital of the rate card. I hit the actual prices because I don't necessarily they vary from country to country. But it's a rate card template that telcos can adopt. If you terminate a simple message, which is kind of like a SMS type message, so it is a replacement from SMS to RCS. There's a certain fee. If you do a rich message, which has pictures or videos or carousels going in, then there's a slightly higher charge. And that's money, that's kind of new use case. That's money coming in, and brands now already know about this because of WhatsApp. And that's a huge benefit of WhatsApp there. Consumers are familiar with it, brands are familiar with it, so you can sell those types of messages. And then there is a conversation, which is even priced even higher, and that typically includes unlimited messages. So one of the questions that comes up from operators, and I'm sure Ramy finds this, and all of us find this, oh, am I going to lose my SMS revenue? Is somehow this going to take away my A2P SMS revenue? And that's a big round of discussion across multiple stakeholders in the operators, and one friction point, one hurdle that certainly exists. Actually, I don't think they do. I mean, they're losing more money to WhatsApp, and RCS money all comes to them and is priced at the same price or higher than SMS price as well. So if you think about it logically, it is not really the case, but that's a concern every operator has.
And now 50 minutes are over, so I think we will continue talking about RCS, but we also going to have breaks. And you know two people to refer to.
Sorry, Jerry, there's one more question.
But we have to be very, very fast.
So I think lots of people talked about iPhone, Apple resisting the RCS adoption. So how did you handle that? Because that doesn't work, right?
So I think the Android, iPhone, and the Get the Message campaign from Google is all in the news, and it's one of the major hurdles in many markets like America and Germany and Japan as well. In some markets, the Android penetration is so high, it's 80%, 90%, it's less of an issue. But we've actually been attacking this problem head on with technology and a solution we call universal RCS. So we are trialing out in many countries, and we just did some campaigns in Spain, for example, with brands. We've had a concern of how to reach iPhone users. And the universal RCS solution provides a way for a brand to develop an RCS agent. So they want to send a rich message, they can develop it in RCS, and we will deliver that entire experience on an iPhone as well. It does not happen natively in the iMessage app, but it happens using PWA.
Just to add to that real quick, I think all of the aggregators here in the room, we're used to having a multi-channel environment. And that's going to continue to live on, whether it's RCS, whether it's WhatsApp in certain markets, whether it's Instagram. And each one of these channels is going to bring a different use case, and each use case is suitable for a different channel. So we're just going to have to coexist with a variety of channels that are there that each brand may choose a subset of to use based on their use case, their audience, their target market. And it's not one or the other, I think it's a variety.
Pick a mix. Well, I probably need to thank you and terminate here, but we'll continue later. Thanks again to Ramy, to